that I die a legend. Yeah, son God, homie, I'm reverend. Breaks, just protecting my investment. Ask about me, integrity's not a question. Straight up, all the way up, with the same ones that was down from the jump. Day one, same ones.
So there's a lot of topwaters out there, and up here it's really known for being one of the topwater meccas. A big question we get asked is, when do I use what? Which is, you know, a pretty reasonable question to ask. It's quite confusing. So I'm gonna break down what I do and my favorite baits and kind of divide it into categories for you guys. You know, I keep 3 trays in my boat: poppers, spooks, prop baits. And prop baits is definitely divided into 2 categories. Spooks is definitely divided into 2 categories, and so is poppers. So we'll start with poppers. By far, you know, historically one of the tournament dominating baits. 2 kinds of poppers I use, big ones and little ones. The little ones I pretty much only use around the mayfly stuff. It's very situational. The bigger poppers is what I use pretty much the rest of the year. So this has been an awesome weapon, you know, Rainy Lake, Lake of the Woods, anywhere you go up here, Marmy, any tournament body of water, Lake Despair. I pretty much always use the X pop if it's not mayfly related. If it's mayfly related and they're really slurping small, you got to go to the little finesse poppers. But yeah, the X pop casts really well. It's really heavy, and it sits in the water in a way that they really get it. So I like it. You could have bigger hooks on it, you know, those are size 4s on there. One thing I do that most people don't do is I actually just put it straight to braid, because I'll wheel this thing, you know, in between some pencil weeds or places where it doesn't belong. And I don't want any issue with getting them out of there. I like the way it casts that way. I like how quick it is to rig up. You know, if it's more open water, I'll put a little 10-inch heavy mono leader on it. But the braid never fouls in these hooks because I'm actually using 50-pound braid. So different rod setup than most people would use for a popper. This is a 7.5 medium GLX. It's super soft. I can just roll cast this thing with my wrist pretty much anywhere I want, and I like that length and that parabolic rod for fighting them. You land a lot of really high landing percentage with this bait. High gear ratio reel, obviously, very standard. So that's the 2 popper situations. This is a target bait for me. I'll go into the other nuances, but for me, for fishing targets, casting at specific targets, specific clumps of weeds, specific reed lines, specific boulders, that's when I use a popper. So hopefully that helps. If I'm just, say, covering water on a vast weed line, that's when I go to a prop bait. 2 different ones, as does everyone. The X prop and a whopper plopper. Whopper plopper is basically like a buzz bait with treble hooks. Everyone knows that. You just cast it out, reel it in, calls a lot of big fish. This one's more the pause. This bait, you need to have a heavy mono leader on. I throw it on the same rod. I just don't have one rigged up yet. It's tonight's project, but I put it on the same rod and I use a 20-pound mono leader. Caught a lot of big fish, a lot of the lakes up here on this bait. So that's the big difference between these, is targets, and for me, covering water. The other category of hard baits, topwaters, is your spooks. So spooks, there's your traditional style spooks, walking baits, and then you've seen over the last few years them emerge with the different styles of spitting spooks. The latest being the Jowler from Rapala that's coming out at ICAST next month. You've seen it at a few tournaments. For me, the spooks are an open water bait. I don't typically use these baits shallow anymore. It's all, you know, deep structure, pelagic fish related, fish on bait, that kind of thing. Both work good. Obviously, over the years, these have been some very instrumental baits for catching big fish for me. They've also accumulated most of the biggest heartbreaks I've had in tournaments. They're, especially on smallmouth, they're fish losing baits too, but they do command big bites. A great way to catch a kicker. You know, that's one of my favorites, that new Rapala Jowler. Got that ready to roll for the summer. This will be tied on the whole time. Now, again, with spooks, typically you use a big mono leader, or some guys use straight mono. For me, this jeller kind of, that lip kind of guards it a bit, and that front treble, I've casted it a bunch and it doesn't seem to get in, so I actually use really heavy braid. This is 50 pound or 65 pound braid. And I just like that. I like having less connections and being able to zing it out there. You know, situationally, again, I'd probably put a mono leader on, but for me, that's, you know, how I like operating that, and it's worked well for me. I use a different rod for this. It's a bit shorter, 7 foot, and yeah, same thing, real parabolic. That braid's gonna get the hooks in, and after that, you just wanna land them, so don't be using a broomstick. These come with red lines, so it's good to go. The commotion this thing makes is pretty sweet, as you can see with that bill, but again, these are for, you know, your deeper fish, your pelagic fish, fish on structure. It's a bait, you know, that I pretty much have in the boat, tied on, ready to roll at all times, because you never know when you're gonna run into schoolers. It's a tough bait to beat when they're schooling on bait. So back to the Silka, like the Silka packs and the trays. A good way to know, I was taught, is when they go yellow like this, they're garbage. So I just change mine out every year, and if I see yellow ones throughout, I carry a bag with me. But definitely something to do. Find you some Silka packs, buy a bag if you got to. You have tons of money invested in tackle, and nothing kills your tackle more than rust. So save yourself a bunch of money, protect your gear, buy some little Silka packs. Throw them in your trays.